I have some news for you that you may find shocking. The church isn't perfect. Father James isn't perfect. Father Burrell isn't perfect. Our bishop isn't perfect. Believe it or not, I'm not even perfect, although I know that's hard to imagine sometimes. And I'll hazard a guess that as wonderful as you might be, you're probably not perfect either. I've spent an unhealthy amount of time lately reading comment threads on news stories online. I'll grant you that the people who write in such places probably aren't the most thoughtful and deliberate members of society. But I still don't think I'm too off base when I say that we seem to be spending an awful lot of time lately demonizing one another. We're the good guys, and those other people are the bad guys. And because they're bad, we need to shut them up. We need to make them go away. On the internet, all Democrats are communists, all Republicans are fascists, all Christians are narrow-minded, hateful zealots. Well, except for the Episcopalians, who are all shallow, liberal heretics. Talk like that happens online, but it also happens more than you might expect in the church. Jesus said, "A man planted wheat in his field, but an enemy snuck in and planted weeds among the wheat. Should we pull up the weeds?" the farmhands asked. "Should we protect the good wheat, let it grow undisturbed?" "No," the farmer said. "If you try to do that, you'll only pull up the wheat along with the weeds. Let them grow together. We'll sort it out at the harvest." I said last week that a parable has many meanings, and that's true. But today, if you'll indulge me, I'll stick to only one. I read today's parable, as many have before me, as a parable of the church. Good and evil exist side by side and are sometimes hard to tell apart. St. Augustine wrote that there are wolves within and sheep without, and so it has always been. I would add that I am both wheat and weed, wolf and sheep, and so are you. And like it or not, we are the church. It matters that we acknowledge that messy reality. If we expect the church to be perfect, we make an idol of it. For as long as we manage to maintain the illusion of perfection, we'll judge those who don't measure up. And when the illusion falls apart, and it will fall apart, we risk losing our faith in the God to whom the church points, a God who will never fail us, but who nowhere guarantees us perfection on this earth, who nowhere guarantees us ease and comfort. The point I'm making isn't a new one. It's been made over and over again throughout Christian history. One source I've been reading lately is a book I'm starting a class on this week, Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. In that book, Bonhoeffer warns against expecting the church to be something that it isn't. Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran pastor in Nazi Germany, in a time when many of the established churches had been taken over by Nazi loyalists. The book arose out of his experience of leading an illegal seminary that sought to train pastors outside of the officially approved church structures. The context in which he wrote no doubt gave his thoughts unique clarity, but the book isn't about that context. It's about Christian community in all times and all places. Bonhoeffer wrote that Christian community is a gift of God, a gift we can't take for granted, a gift we should be grateful for every day. I've certainly learned to appreciate that gift in this time when we've been physically apart, and I hope you have too. Bonhoeffer wrote about the blessings of Christian community, but he also warned against making an idol of the church. He didn't use these words, but in effect, he warned against expecting the church to be a place where you find no weeds, a place where all you find is a healthy field of wheat growing in splendid isolation towards the sun. Utopias seldom end well. And if you expect the church to be an idealized utopia, it will only lead to disillusionment. A healthy Christian community is one in which each person keeps their focus on God, but they have the privilege of doing so side by side, of helping one another, of bolstering one another's faith. Members of such a community are allowed to be imperfect, real, honest about their fears and their sins, secure in their faith that Christ is the foundation upon which they stand. They have no need to wear a costume, to pretend to be something they're not. It's the grace of God that brings them together, and not their own perfection. A healthy Christian community acknowledges that the church on earth is not perfect. It acknowledges that wheat and weeds must grow side by side. Let me be clear here. I'm not saying that anything goes. I'm not saying that there is any moral equivalence between good and evil. Our faith may well require us to speak out against the evils we see in the world. Bonhoeffer himself spoke loudly enough that the Nazi government eventually killed him. Our faith might require us to speak out, but it doesn't require us to judge the hearts of those who oppose us. If we find that we have enemies, we need to remember that Jesus told us to love them. And we need to at least consider the possibility that our vision might not be as clear as we think it is. And so as we muddle through wheat and tares together, please don't expect the church to be perfect. As St. Paul says in today's second reading, the Christian life is a life of hope. A life of hope in things we can't quite yet see. And so let us live in that hope.